Hi, I'm Tony Kramer, your host of the Agriculture Technology Podcast, and I'm sitting down with agriculture technology and equipment experts to help you enhance your operation for today, tomorrow, and into the future. In this episode, I talk with Ross Florhaug about using UAVs for application in agriculture. With that, let's dive into it. Like I said, we are going to be talking about something a little unique in the ag sector. Now, I know there's been a lot of buzz around it in the last, let's say, even probably 10 years around using UAVs in the ag industry. How can we use them? Where can we use them? And how can they really benefit the users or the customers that are hiring UAVs for anything? I'm really excited for this episode because we do have a real life UAV applicator that we are going to talk to. So Ross, thank you very much for joining us on the show today. To get started, let's just hear a little bit about you and your background and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I farm here in southeast central North Dakota, and NDSU research team was out doing some blackbird deterrent tests on how to keep blackbirds out of the sunflowers, and they brought a small spraying drone out in 2021, and they had a product they were trying to spray right, get them out of the sunflowers, and all my head starts kind of turning a little bit, and the wheels start going, and called a buddy and said, "Hey, do you want to buy a drone?" He goes, "Well, yeah, let's do it." Initially, we were just going to use it for our own farms, for some spot spraying and that kind of thing. And we decided to set ourselves up commercially just in case the neighbors called. And that's kind of how we got started in it. Back in 2022 was our first year with the drone.
You've had a couple years at it. And before we dive into everything that you do or all of the applications that you offer, let's just kind of dive into the fleet initially.
When we started, we purchased it's a Phantom 4 RTK with a multi-spec cam on it. That was initially our idea was to fly the acres with that. It would grid them out. You would take that data back to your desk or whatever, run it through the Pix4D ag software, and you could basically create your prescription map, where the weed pressures were, or if there was fertilizer deficiencies, that camera could detect quite a few different things. So initially that was our plan. We would fly it with that, we'd bring it back, we'd create a prescription, kick it out onto a jump drive, and basically plug that right into the controller, which we had a 30-liter sprayer that first year, and it would then autonomously go and spray those spots. In theory, that was great. We ended up not using the RTK, the Phantom 4 RTK with the multi-spec very often. It was just an extra step in the process, another cost to the farmer, and the cameras and things were so darn good on the sprayers themselves. Once we got up in the air and could kind of get a good look at the fields just with our naked eye, we did most of our scouting that way and was able to do things a lot quicker.
So you were using just a basic Phantom 4 in conjunction with the spray drone in order to initially, like you said, kind of hopefully ease some stress or some guessing, but then you found that with your spray drone alone, you were able to go along and do what you needed to do. Now, what are you using for a spray drone?
Phantom 4 is a pretty basic drone. The camera that was underneath of it was the big piece of that. Just the extra service or the extra job that we would have to do to do the collecting of the imagery would have made it not quite as cost effective for the farmer in the end. And because initially our thought process was, how can we conserve chemical, less waste and just go hit the spots. But the cameras on the DJI Agrus T-Series drones are very, very good. So if you have a good eye and you can get up in the air and take a look at things, you can really pick it out pretty well. And then we could create a map, just on the fly, right from the controllers. It basically pulls up like a Google Earth map, and you can plot your points with your fingers right on that thing and kind of draw out what you want it to go spray grid and where you go. So yeah, we did a lot of that just kind of on the fly with our using common sense and our background in farming ourselves, and was able to do a pretty good job a lot quicker for guys.
Yeah, I'd imagine it'd make it a lot easier to be able to utilize that T-Series, that DJI Agrus T-Series drone to be able to do everything that you need to do. Now, next question I have, Ross, is Are you guys just utilizing one of those Agrus drones, or have you now grown the fleet? Is there any sort of swarm application, or are you just flying one at a time? How does that look?
That's a good question. So when we first submitted our paperwork into the FAA, we applied for a swarming exemption because we could kind of see that coming down the pipe. When we first filed our petitions, it was still pretty early on in the process. They hadn't ever approved one at that point, and it kind of held up our paperwork on everything else. So we ended up removing that piece. So we don't technically have a swarming exemption to fly multiple drones with one person. We have to have a pilot for each unit if we're going to fly multiple units. But yeah, so in 22, we ran just the 130-liter unit. In 2023, we ended up getting a couple 40-liter units. And now this year, we've kind of put the Agrus T-Series ones to bed a little bit. We still have them, but we haven't been using them lately. We're using an XAG P100 Pro model. Flies quite a bit faster. It follows the train a little bit better. It has a 50-liter tank on it.
That's kind of neat to hear that you've been doing it long enough. I say long enough, you've been at it for 2 years, but you've been doing it long enough to find some of the pros and cons about different drones. So now you've moved into the XAG series of drones or manufacturer of drones. Other than the speed, what set that next level of drone apart from the initial drones you started using?
Even from the T30 to the T40, the nozzles changed. We went from a T-jet nozzle, which is a common use nozzle, to the rotary nozzles, which you could actually change your atomization and your droplet size right from the controller on the ground in real time. So if you needed to make that droplet size a little bit more coarse so it gets down and you're not drifting, and depending on what you're spraying and when you're spraying, made it for some more flexibility that way. So we really liked the new nozzles. And then, yes, the speed was a big thing. When you sprayed with that 30-liter unit, you were only doing about 17, 18 feet per second. The jump to the 40-liter unit, you could spray at about 30 to 32 feet per second. And this is at a 2-gallon rate. And the XAG, you can fly at about 45 feet per second. If you do the math there, you can get a whole lot more done with those bigger drones and the better pumps and the nozzles they have.
Kind of makes sense if you think about it. It all goes hand in hand. Larger drones, larger pumps, larger payload, all of that together, I would imagine, gives you the flexibility. Now, you said you still have the DJI Agrus drones that could be utilized in any sort of a fashion or manner, but you've now built that fleet out to be able to pick and choose what you want to do and when you want to do it. With the drones that you have, Ross, do you do any sort of dry application along with the spraying?
So we've gotten some inquiries about that. We do own a spreader attachment for one of the XAG models, and we have our original spreader attachment for that 30-liter unit, but we have never actually used them commercially, for anybody. We've tested them out with some fertilizer and just over our own fields, and we haven't done it. We did get some inquiries this winter in the off season, guys, about using it to interseed a cover rye mix into their silage corn, which I think could be a good thing. There's the guys that are interested in that next year, so we're not going to get rid of our spreaders quite yet, but there is some applications out there for it. I know another guy in the state that's been doing this for a couple of years now too, that we work with a little bit, has done some, and guys have been pretty happy with that. It is there and available. As guys kind of become aware of it, I think there'll be more of that as time goes.
So that brings me to my next question, and this will be kind of a two-part question. What types of applications do you offer? I guess, what have you done on a day-to-day basis? What crops are you spraying? Where are you spraying, I guess, and what is being done with the services you offer?
That's a good question too. It's varied a little bit, just depending on the year and what's out there. We tend to do quite a bit of work on pasture ground for spurge, thistle, wormwood, that kind of thing. The river hills and stuff where a lot of the pasture is, up along the James River here. The terrain is a bit rough. It's tough for those guys to get out there and with any kind of ground equipment and do any kind of effective job or efficient job. So having us go out there has been a big thing for us. I bet you 70-75% of the acres that we did a year ago probably came from pasture ground. Now, fast forward to this year, we've been really, really wet. So for the first half of the season, we did all cropland. We basically just now started on pasture ground. So it's been a little bit different. This year we've sprayed corn, soybeans, pinto beans, wheat. We've sprayed just about everything. Whereas the past couple of years we did some fungicide work, insecticide on sunflowers, some of that foliar cure on your wheat, and then some desiccation work. This year we've done a little bit of everything.
And I would imagine along with that uniqueness of types of application, I'm sure the size or area of application varies as well. On average, these applications that you are doing, how many acres are you covering generally?
That all depends, really. We do some really small jobs. Last little job we did yesterday was there's a small town close here that their lagoon had cattails growing in it, and the state came out and wanted them to take care of the cattails. They got some rodeo out, and we went over there. It was only about a 14-acre piece to do. We just took one drone over there, and we were in and out of there in less than an hour. And then sometimes we get calls to do big areas. At a customer earlier this year, it got too wet, and he was busy trying to get some other stuff sprayed, and his pinto beans were getting dirty, and he had a 630-acre field, and we went over there and hammered that out in a day with two drones. So it just all kind of depends on what we get called to do.
I've been involved in agriculture all my life and working with RDO for 14 years, but I always had that mindset of when we talked spray drones, I immediately go to row crop application, the corn, the soybeans, the sunflowers, whatever it may be. After talking to some of you in the industry that are actually doing UAV application, there's so many more kind of roads that you can go down. You talked about wastewater lagoons and being able to take care of stuff there. You talked about the pastures, somewhere where you're likely not going to take a ground sprayer, but you can take this UAV and spray out noxious weeds in a pasture or whatever it may be. So I think that's really a really unique thing. Now, my next question, and maybe there hasn't been anything quite super wild yet, but what is the craziest application you've ever done, or maybe the most unique inquiry that you didn't have the capability of doing? What are people asking for in terms of UAV application?
Well, the most interesting one that I got, and it didn't work out, but there there was a guy, he called, and his daughter was having a reveal party, and they wanted to know if I could come by and spray some pink water out of a drone.
Yeah, I can see that. You see some of I've seen videos of the air tractors, the crop dusters doing gender reveals and other things. So, hey, there you go. That's maybe something that you need to add to your list of services as UAV application gender reveals.
Maybe we could use the spreaders for that. If we can get a powder or something, we can blast it out there.
There you go. That's a possibility. As we were talking through the different methods of application, some of the things that you have done, why do customers call you as an aerial applicator? Why don't they call the airplane? Why don't they utilize a ground sprayer, whether it be their own or the local co-op? What draws a customer to utilize UAV aerial application?
It depends. There's a few different reasons, I think. One is just availability. The crop dusters that are in the area, there isn't very many of them. They're pretty darn busy most of the year. I don't think any of those guys are hurting for work to do, so they stay busy, and sometimes they can't always get to everybody timely. So I think we pick up some of that. The other thing too, in some of the terrain we're dealing with, if there's highline wires, there's trees, there's different obstacles to take into consideration. We can fly a little bit closer to those things, as we're a little safer. We're on the ground. We're not up in the rig ourselves, so it's safer for the pilots as well. And then also some chemical savings where we're able to more easily map out, let's say if there's some sloughs out in the middle of the field where buzzing across, it's hard for him to, shut off and turn it back on effectively and efficiently. We can map those areas out and save guys quite a bit on chemical costs. So there's more efficiency there. Our biggest hurdle is obviously how much volume we can get out. Early in the season, when that first herbicide pass comes after guys get the crop in the ground, and if they're grow and extend or extend flex soybeans and they need to get some water out with their dicamba or whatever they might be spraying out there, where you need 10, 15 gallons of water, that's going to be a little bit down the road, I think, where it's going to need a lot bigger drone to do that effectively or efficiently. So I don't think we're in any way, shape, or form taking away the need for the big ground rigs anytime soon, or the planes for that matter. I think there's plenty of work out there to be done. I can hear the plane going about every time that we're out there spraying ourselves.
You bring up a really good point there, and it actually leads me into some of the questions I have here to wrap up our conversation. But when UAV application kind of became a thing, that was always the concern, was you're taking the business away, or you're shutting down the business of ground sprayers or crop dusters in airplanes, helicopters, whatever it may be. There's definitely a fit for every one of those methods of application just because of differences. Now, you talked about your limitation of being able to, the payload. You can't carry a ton of water, and if you did, you would be filling constantly. In addition to the payload capacity, what are some of the biggest hurdles that you've ran into? And then what are some of the things that have worked really well for you in your drone spraying business?
The biggest hurdles was just learning the equipment, and as with any new piece of equipment, especially when there's new technology thrown on it, whether it's a tractor, a combine, or a drone, there's days you're going to be scratching your head wondering what the heck is going on and why things aren't working very well. Not all roses every day, but there's been some firmware issues that right from the company where the updates would come through, we'd update the drone, and then all of a sudden things would start going haywire. There's been some growing pains with it too. One of the big things is just making sure that your ground rig or wherever you're filling from, that you have a pretty good system in place there to make sure that you can fill quickly, you can charge batteries effectively. Generators have been a big point of significance for us. We started with a couple gas generators, and to run those chargers, those DJI chargers each pull 40 amps just to charge a battery. So if you put a 10, 11,000 watt gas generator on one charger, that's all you get off that one generator. We've moved into a diesel generator that's 200 amps, 48 kilowatts with a 200-gallon diesel tank on it, so we can keep generating the power to recharge the batteries. The other thing, too, is, like I said, things break down. Just because it's new doesn't mean it's going to work perfectly for you. We've learned that we need to have a decent supply of parts on hand. There are dealers in the States that do carry them. Their inventory isn't always great. So sometimes, if you don't have it on hand in fungicide time and the window to spray is, today and tomorrow, if you have to wait 2 weeks for parts, you're going to be in tough shape. We've learned to kind of stockpile some parts here and make sure that if something does happen, we can keep going with it. And then you need a little bit of manpower too. You need 2-3 guys sometimes to keep everything moving.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Just the basic logistics of all of it. I never thought about the generator and how much power those chargers pull and what they need. And I'd imagine is this set up in the back of a pickup or a box van, or what do you guys use to kind of tote all this stuff around?
Yeah, so we've kind of evolved a bit since the first year. We just had a pickup where we pulled an enclosed trailer behind us. That first year, we had about 500 gallons of water storage in there, some pumps and different things, room to store the drones. We'd pull that around the countryside. Last year, we bought a 1-ton flatbed pickup and pulled the trailer with that too, and ran that last year pretty hard. And now this year, we trading that pickup off, and we bought a Class 7 truck with a 24-foot flatbed, built a frame on that flatbed and a deck that sits about 14 feet up in the air. So we actually sit up there so we can get good line of sight and be able to see our drones as they're going across the field. And we land them right up on top of that and fill them up there. Generator is bolted to the deck of the truck. So it's all kind of a all-inclusive machine right there. We can get in the truck and go, and the drones are on it, the generator's there, everything's all in one spot.
Kind of sounds like you guys are no different than the helicopter pilots out there landing on top of the tender trucks and doing everything they need to do. It's kind of neat to hear that you guys have adapted and made things more efficient and more fluid to continue being productive and efficient. You also talked about the manpower, having a couple of people. So it's not just you out there.
To be in compliance, you're supposed to have a spotter, essentially. So you have one guy that's just in charge of flying the drone, piloting the drone, making sure he's always on task there. And then you have another guy who's a spotter who can then also help with your battery swaps and your filling each time. So it works a lot better if there's a couple guys on scene, that's for sure.
Absolutely. If anybody wanted to learn more about what you do, or just maybe about UAV application in general, anything like that, where can people go? Who can they talk to learn more about this stuff?
When something breaks on the farm and I'm not quite sure how to fix it, I jump on the internet and I watch a YouTube video and away we go. So, but no, there's all kinds of things out there online. Some of the different dealers that are in the States here, I know Agrus Spray Drones out of Missouri, and there's Tenacity Ag out of Minnesota. They do some side-by-side trials with the different models and really take you through how to use them, what they use them for. But yeah, you could sit on YouTube for days and watch material on these things.
Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you again, Ross, for taking the time to sit down and chat with me. Like I said, very excited to have you on the show and talk to an actual pilot that is out there doing UAV application, because for the past 10 years, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of discussion about it, but it just seems like it never really went anywhere. And hearing that you are out there doing this, starting it 2 years ago, 2 years into it, and you continue to grow and adapt and change based on what the industry is asking for, it's really neat to hear that background. So thanks for doing this, and good luck with the rest of your season.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already. You can subscribe to the show on the many different podcasting apps that we're streaming this out to, such as Apple, Google, Spotify, as well as many others. While you're out there, drop us a review. We'd love to hear what you think about the show. Lastly, make sure to follow RDO Equipment Company on Facebook, Instagram, and X, and also catch our latest videos on YouTube. You can also follow me on X at RDO Tony K.